Hello and welcome to Firstpost Spotlight, where we bring you stories that matter to you from all across the world. From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, we shed light on issues that shape our world. I'm Joshua Barnes, live from the Firstpost studios. Let's begin with the top headlines. Air chaos continues in India as the biggest carrier Indigo cancels over 500 flights across the country. The disruptions have forced India's airline regulator to withdraw a new policy of weekly rest for pilots. Taiwan and Japan voice concern over Chinese military activities as Beijing deploys a large number of vessels across East Asian waters. The US unveils a new national security strategy, outlining a shift from a global role to prioritise specific regional challenges. The UN warns of an intensified crackdown in Tanzania following October's violent elections. The opposition claims over 1,000 people have died in the unrest so far. And the European Union hits Elon Musk's X with a $140 million fine, the first major penalty under its Digital Services Act, triggering an immediate showdown with the Trump administration. We begin today with the latest from India. New Delhi has rolled out the red carpet for visiting Russian President Vladimir Putin. The two leaders delivered a joint statement in the Indian capital and exchanged several agreements under the ambit of the India-Russia Special and Privileged Strategic Partnership. Delivering the joint statement, Prime Minister Modi said India-Russia relations are entering a new phase, one marked by historical milestones and strategic stability. Prime Minister Modi emphasised that energy security has been a key pillar of the India-Russia partnership. In response, Putin assured that Russia is ready to supply uninterrupted energy to India.
ऊर्जा सुरक्षा भारत रूस साझेदारी का मजबूत और महत्वपूर्ण स्तंभ रहा है। सिविल न्यूक्लियर एनर्जी के क्षेत्र में हमारा दशकों पुराना सहयोग क्लीन एनर्जी की हमारी साझा प्राथमिकताओं को सार्थक बनाने में महत्वपूर्ण रहा है। हम इस विन विन सहयोग को जारी रखेंगे।
We are ready to continue uninterrupted shipments of fuel for the fast-growing Indian economy. We are also conducting a flagship project to build the largest Indian nuclear power plant, Kudankulam. 2 out of 6 reactor units have been already connected to the energy network.
Prime Minister Modi also pointed to India and Russia's long-standing cooperation against terrorism, recalling incidents from the Pahalgam terror attack in April this year to the Crocus City Hall attack in Moscow in March 2024. PM Modi said that to uproot terrorism, global unity is essential. To boost anti-terror cooperation, both Prime Minister Modi and President Putin pointed to close coordination in BRICS, SCO, the UN, G20 and other multilateral platforms. The two nations announced their economic roadmap for the next 5 years. This includes India opening a pharma factory in Russia and Russia launching a joint urea production unit in India. Russia will train Indian seafarers for advanced maritime navigation. President Putin also offered small nuclear reactor technology to India. New Delhi announced a free e-visa facility for Russian nationals, alongside a joint mobility pact and a shipbuilding cooperation agreement. The two leaders also discussed the Ukraine war, with Prime Minister Modi underlining that India is on the side of peace. Let's listen in.
एक्सेलेंसी, यूक्रेन के संकट के बाद हमारी लगातार चर्चा होती रही है। आपने भी समय समय पर एक सच्चे मित्र के रूप में हमें सभी चीजों से अवगत कराया है। मैंने हमेशा कहा है कि भारत न्यूट्रल नहीं है, भारत का पक्ष है और वो पक्ष शांति का है।
Russian President Putin highlighted that even as the global order shifts, India and Russia remain particularly privileged strategic partners. Earlier this morning, New Delhi put on the full ceremonial display at Rashtrapati Bhavan. President Draupadi Murmu received the Russian leader with a Tri-Services Guard of Honor. After this, Putin's day began with a solemn stop at the Mahatma Gandhi Memorial in Rajghat. The Russian president laid a wreath at the memorial and signed the visitors' book, leaving behind a message calling for a just world order. Moscow remains New Delhi's biggest military partner, even as India diversifies its defence procurement. Today's meeting also marks 25 years of the India-Russia strategic partnership, a partnership that began during Putin's first year in office. Annual summits such as this one have become a defining feature of the relationship. With the joint statement out, the broader picture becomes clear. India is attempting to stabilise an old partnership without alienating its new ones. And the world is watching how New Delhi continues to balance principle with pragmatism. And for more on this, we have with us Ambassador Ashok Mukherjee, India's former permanent representative to the United Nations, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you for joining us, Ambassador.
Thank you for inviting me.
Ambassador, why is this India-Russia summit so significant?
Well, it's significant because, as you mentioned, it's the 25th year of the strategic partnership. The 23rd summit, one or two have not been held because of the pandemic and domestic reasons. But the fact that the two leaders have met, that this is President Putin's 25th year of overseeing Russia's partnership with India, and Prime Minister Modi's 8th time meeting President Putin in the summit, I think that is important, essentially because it has solidified the trust between the two leaders, a trust which has enabled them to also introduce informal summit mechanism from their meeting in Sochi in 2018, which has been built upon by a very, very unusual interaction in a very informal setting. For example, they have met over informal dinners, which are one-to-one dinners. They have even sat together in long automobile rides and discussed issues. So this element of trust is very important, and I think the summit has benefited from that.
Yes, and given your vast experience, you are perfectly placed to answer what you see as the most important part of the leaders' joint statement.
Well, the most important part is how to take the bilateral economic relationship forward. This has been the challenge ever since the strategic partnership was announced 25 years ago. At that time, Russia was a different country. It was part of the G8. India was under American and Western sanctions because of its nuclear weapons tests. So it was a different period, but even at that time, the realization and the commitment to make the economic relationship the fulcrum of the strategic partnership was articulated, and attempts were made to carry it forward. I think what has happened in the last 5 or 6 years is a conscious decision from the summit in 2019 to diversify the economic relationship, to bring in two elements which were not so active before. One was to introduce direct economic cooperation between Russia's regions and India's states. And the second was to increase the participation of the private sector into this economic relationship. So in addition to the government-led joint economic commissions and their subgroups, today you have also these two other dimensions of the economic partnership. And I think that taken together, they can create the outcomes that are contained in the joint statement.
Yes, Ambassador Mukherjee, we were expecting to hear more about defence cooperation. Why do you think we didn't?
Well, essentially, the defence cooperation did not feature in that prominent detail in the joint statement because one day before the summit, the India-Russia Military Joint Governmental Commission met in New Delhi, presided over by the defence ministers of the two countries. And they have their own work plan, which has been endorsed by the joint statement of the summit. So I think that for one, it was considered to be redundant to reproduce all those details in the joint statement. And the second is that there has been a move in the defense cooperation part of the India-Russia relationship away from the buyer-seller relationship of the past to an increased salience for joint cooperation, joint manufacture, transfers of technology, and so on. And I think that this is an area where new projects are being identified in terms of the changing environment in which both countries have to respond to challenges to their national security. So it's therefore a policy framework, a framework for innovation, for cooperation, and even in the joint statement is mentioned for exports of jointly produced products to third countries. So this is something that is probably new, and I think that the focus therefore is on that meeting rather than the discussions during the summit.
Yes, and finally, Ambassador, Prime Minister Narendra Modi mentioned the Pahalgam attack and anti-terror cooperation. What is the significance of this visit in sharpening India's strategic messaging against terrorism?
Well, the fact that out of the 70 paragraphs of the joint statement, 5 paragraphs are devoted to countering terrorism shows that both sides have agreed on a common roadmap with which to counter this threat to their national security. And both Russia and India have experienced the terrorist attacks, not only Pahalgam and the Crocus City, which were mentioned in the joint document, but also going back over the last 25 years, they have developed a very robust bilateral partnership in countering terrorism. I think one dimension which is behind the words of the joint statement is the increasing politicization of the use of terrorism by countries. For example, we saw in Afghanistan proscribed UN terrorists, the Taliban and individual leaders of the Taliban being mainstreamed into effective control of the country. And more recently in Syria, in December last year, a UN proscribed terrorist and his group were mainstreamed into heading the regime in Syria. So I think that is a concern which is shared by India and Russia, in the sense that if they have worked together with other members of the United Nations to counter terrorism by using the Security Council and its restrictions on terrorists so far, then today probably we are at a situation where countering terrorism has gone back into the national and bilateral mode rather than through the UN mode.
Yes, absolutely. A hugely significant day for the furthering of bilateral relations between Russia and India. Ambassador Mukherjee, thank you ever so much for providing such unique insights.
Thank you.
Moving on now to Washington, where a major pillar of Indo-Pacific security just received a powerful green light. The Pentagon has formally endorsed the AUKUS Pact. It is a trilateral defence agreement between the United States, the United Kingdom and Australia, and it is now setting the stage for one of the most significant submarine transfers in modern military history. After 5 months of scrutiny, the US Department of Defence announced that the plan to supply Australia with at least 3 Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack submarines is fully aligned with President Donald Trump's America First policy. The Pentagon said the recent review confirmed that the deal, originally signed in 2021 under former President Joe Biden, remains strategically sound and politically compatible with the current administration's priorities.
Consistent with President Trump's guidance that AUKUS should move full steam ahead, the review identified opportunities to put AUKUS on the strongest possible footing.
The submarine pact was discussed when the Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese met US President Donald Trump in October.
And on defence, we've already had a discussion about taking it to the next level. Our defence and security partnership with AUKUS is so important for us, and I thank you for the support that the administration are giving as well.
Australia's Defence Minister applauded the review, adding that it is up to Washington to release the document publicly. For Australia, these submarines are not just metal and machinery. They are the backbone of its evolving defence posture in the Pacific. The trilateral AUKUS deal could cost Australia up to $235 billion over the next 3 decades. The deal has 2 pillars. The first pillar is about supply and delivery of nuclear-powered attack submarines. Under this, Australia will buy 3 second-hand Virginia-class submarines from the US from 2032, with the option to purchase 2 further. And after that, the plan is to design and build an entirely new nuclear-powered submarine model for the UK and Australian navies. Pillar 2 is about allies collaborating on their quote-unquote advanced capabilities, such as sharing military expertise. At its core, the deal is believed to be about countering China's growing presence in the Indo-Pacific region. With regional tensions rising and China's naval reach expanding, Canberra has been investing heavily in strengthening their long-range strike capabilities. The announcement comes amid sweeping changes inside Australia's own defence establishment. In one of the biggest bureaucratic overhauls since the mid-1970s, the Albanese government is merging 3 major defence agencies into a single independent delivery body. The move follows months of warnings that cost overruns and slow production were undermining Australia's readiness at a time of growing regional uncertainty. The Trump administration had previously urged Australia to increase defence spending to at least 3.5% of the GDP. Responding to that, Prime Minister Albanese said that his government is already increasing defence spending by about $6.5 billion. So as the Indo-Pacific grows more contested and military modernisation accelerates on all sides, AUKUS is shaping up to be one of the defining security arrangements of this decade. And for Washington, London and Canberra, the message tonight is unmistakable. The partnership is not just intact, it is entering its next phase. Let's shift our focus to Britain. As the UK enforces tougher student visa rules, several universities are revising their admissions approach and are now stopping applications from what they classify as high-risk countries. These institutions say they are under pressure to admit only genuine students, especially after a rise in visa refusals and concerns that the study route has been misused. According to reports, at least 9 UK universities reduced or temporarily paused student recruitment from Pakistan and Bangladesh. The list includes major institutions such as the University of Chester, the University of East London, Sunderland, Oxford Brookes and several others. Some universities suspended admissions for specific courses, others halted entire intakes, and a few extended their pause until 2026. But why are UK universities pausing or restricting students from Pakistan and Bangladesh? They say the UK Home Office has tightened its rules. Universities must keep their visa rejection rate below 5%. If they exceeded this limit, they could lose their licence to bring in international students altogether. But the reality is very different for some countries. According to reports, 18% of Pakistani and 22% of Bangladeshi student visa applications were rejected, far higher than the new 5% cap. Because these rejection rates were so high, universities feared they would break the rule. Some institutions also pointed to slow visa processing and a rise in cases where students arrived on study visas but later applied for asylum. As a result, several universities, including Hertfordshire and Glasgow Caledonian, were placed under stricter monitoring. So they temporarily stopped taking students from these 2 countries. The UK government said the student visa route should not be used as a way to settle in the country permanently. This change happened as part of a bigger overhaul of the UK's immigration policy. The UK government has been working to sharply reduce migration, and official data shows net migration had already dropped by nearly 70% between 2024 and 2025, compared to earlier peaks. As part of this tougher approach, the Home Office also tightened its oversight of student visas. Its data shows that acceptance rates from Pakistan and Bangladesh has been declining since 2023, while countries like China, India and Nepal continued to send large numbers of students without similar issues. Experts said this new environment has created a major challenge for lower fee universities that depend heavily on international students. With the UK pushing for low migration and higher compliance, these institutions are forced to pause admissions from countries with high visa rejection rates to avoid breaking Home Office rules. For now, the UK's visa rules remain tough, and many universities plan to keep restrictions in place until 2026. But the Home Office insisted it still values international students. Institutions warned that the new standards were difficult to meet and the pauses were necessary to stay compliant. Students from Pakistan and Bangladesh now face a more uncertain path to UK education as the crackdown continues. And we now turn to one of the world's most geopolitically charged hubs, Taiwan, where a popular Chinese app has come under fire over serious security fears. Taiwan's Interior Ministry has announced that it will suspend access to the Chinese social media platform RedNote for 1 year, alleging that the app poses significant security risks. RedNote has around 3 million users in Taiwan. The move comes after a probe identified more than 1,700 fraud cases since 2024. The ministry said RedNote was linked to fraud schemes that caused losses of more than $7.9 million. It also stated that RedNote failed to meet all 15 criteria in a government cybersecurity assessment, raising red flags about its security and compliance standards. The ministry claimed it had reached out to RedNote's parent firm based in Shanghai back in October, demanding concrete measures to ensure user data security and legal compliance. The company, however, did not respond, leaving authorities with no choice but to take action. Officials added that the platform's lack of cooperation with local laws had hampered fraud investigations, creating a legal vacuum. As a result, the government deemed it necessary to consider imposing restrictions for 1 year, with future action depending on whether the app complies with Taiwanese law. Taiwan also stressed that any digital platform operating on the island must follow local legal frameworks, including the appointment of legal representatives responsible under Taiwanese jurisdiction. The ministry urged people not to download the app and advised current users to uninstall it immediately and switch to other legal social platforms that comply with local information security standards. Taiwan's largest opposition party, however, has slammed the move as nothing short of digital censorship, warning that blocking RedNote for a year is a dangerous restriction on internet freedom, and claimed that the government is using national security as a cover to limit free speech. Opposition leaders added that many users are already asking how to quote-unquote climb the firewall, a term popular in mainland China for using VPNs to bypass censorship, suggesting that people may try to access the app despite the ban in the future. What's worth noting is that RedNote has also run into trouble at home. China's Cyberspace Administration said in September that it issued warnings and strict punishments to the platform's executives, criticizing what it called quote-unquote trivial and negative content on the app. Earlier this year in January, the app saw a surge in users in the United States when Americans feared that TikTok could be banned under US national security laws. Meanwhile, the Shanghai-based company behind RedNote is growing at a stunning pace. The company expects its profits to nearly triple by 2025, potentially hitting around $3 billion, and was recently valued at around $31 billion and still privately held, with major backers including HSG and Alibaba. Taiwan claims its move is part of a wider push to protect its digital space from fraud and data abuse. However, as tensions with Beijing persist, the RedNote ban becomes more than a tech story, a deeper political struggle over security, sovereignty, and trust. That's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again next week at the same time. Until then, thanks for watching.
From breaking news to the day's biggest controversies, shedding light on the world's top headlines, detailed analysis on the stories that matter the most to you. Catch it all on Spotlight. at 6 p.m. India time and 12:30 GMT. Only on Firstpost.